Welcome back to Ditch the Guilt, our latest Spotcast. I'm Beth Genly, your host, and today I'm welcoming Marilyn Paul, PhD, to talk about regular deep renewal time, or Oasis time. Marilyn carves out innovative pathways to productivity. She draws on her extensive consulting and coaching experience, her academic originality, and the power of traditional wisdom to create valuable learning experiences for a wide range of people. She brings thoughtful, integrative approaches to a wide range of individual, team, and organizational clients. Her recent book, An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life, received outstanding reviews. And her first book, It's Hard to Make a Difference When You Can't Find Your Keys, which I love that title, has sold over 150,000 copies worldwide. Marilyn, welcome to the Spotcast.
Hi, Beth. It's so great to be with you.
I'm very glad you're here. What the heck is Oasis time?
Oasis time is a type of rest that's actually set aside from our normal patterns of action. Now, we all think we can just have a quick rest. Let's put down our phone, let's lie down, but very quickly our patterns of action start right up again. And I learned from my own experience that I do not really know how to step away from my work and my home and my family and really get what I need to renew and restore myself. But I learned how to do it in what I call Oasis time.
So why did you feel the need to do it then if it was challenging for you?
Well, I have to say, I first learned Oasis time is based on this idea of Shabbat, or the Sabbath. And I learned about it when I was in graduate school at Yale, your alma mater as well. And I had really run myself into the ground. I'd gotten quite ill. I could not move. And I am a real action-oriented person. I was not interested in rest. I'm not interested in taking time off. I love the go, go, go and the do, do, do. I love that. But my body was not able to keep up with my aspirations. And I got to a point where I had to rest a lot, but I never really rested. It was sort of rest. Like I'd sit down for a few minutes and then I'd be back to work again.
Were you getting bored when you rested like that? I mean, I mean, right. I totally relate to, I love the go, go, go and the do, 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 because I'm right there with you. I love that too. But right. I'm wondering why settling into deeper rest was an issue.
I think that's such a good question, Beth. I think part of it is a habit. Part of it is I really did not know or understand the value of deep rest. And I have to say, I have been meditating since my 20s. So I understood the value of sitting and meditating, and I still do. But I was missing that sort of deep soul rest where I could just let my mind wander and not have to bring it back to my breath. And I didn't get it. I didn't want it. And yet I needed it. I needed that type of rest. My body was letting me know.
Well, at Yale, and since then, I have had moments where my body let me know. I refer to it as getting hit by a brick on the side of the head, because yes. the more minor warning signs, I was like, oh, well, I can just push through that.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Until something came and clobbered me and said, you will lie down. You won't enjoy it, but you will lie down, which is, not the fun way to take a break, right?
Exactly right. Exactly. And I had one of those. I had an autoimmune disease really strike me down in the middle of graduate school, and I still wouldn't rest. In fact, I learned about Shabbat. Now, I have to say I had no interest particularly in Shabbat. I come from the Jewish tradition. Sabbath time, all of that was, no, I'm not interested. And so someone invited me to Shabbat dinner several times. I always turn them down. I'm too busy. But he invited me so many times, I finally said, oh, okay, I'll go and get this guy off my back. And I went. And there was a room full of people lighting candles and singing and talking, not about their work, not about their aspirations, not about the most recent movies, but what was important to them in life. And I walked away thinking, what was that? That was phenomenal. And I went home and went right back to work. But it was an experience of people who knew how to change the channel from the life of aspiration and doing and getting things done and ruled by the to-do list. Somehow they had put that all aside. So I went back. And
how long did it take you? I'm just curious. How long did it take you before you went back for another one?
I went back in a month. It was a group that met monthly.
Oh, good for you. It might have taken me years, but okay, go ahead.
I went back in a month, and in a couple months, maybe 3, 4, 5 months, I took a whole evening off. And little by little, I learned how to take a evening and a morning off. And then I tried a day. So I learned that this was doable, but not only that, some of the most accomplished people I knew were in this group. I had no idea that you could actually take a day off a week. It sounded preposterous to me. And yet that's something I do now, raising a teenager, writing my book with my consulting work, being in community, doing community service. I take a day off every week. And it requires some skill and commitment. And now I feel like I don't know how I ever lived without this.
So tell us why you feel it's so important. What are the benefits of it? And you know, I'd love to hear some stories from your practice as well as your own personal story on that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits, one is most of us feel like we can't stop. Like there's always something else to do. And I call it the just one more thing syndrome. We always
only one? Sorry, I just had to say.
Absolutely, no. I call it the just one more thing because when I want to stop on Friday night, I think I'll stop after I do just one more thing. Then I'll stop. Of course, just one more thing turns into 2 and 3 and 4. And then finally I realized, I just have to stop because that list of things to do does not go away. In fact, setting this boundary and stopping is one of the most important things we can do every week, because there is a moment when every week still, I have to say, stop. Whatever I feel I have to do, I am not going to do it because there's something more important. And this gets to your question. What do you get from this day off or hour off or 3 hours? What you get is renewed perspective. So important because actually when the time comes to end your oasis in time, some of those very urgent things actually disappear. They don't seem urgent. Another thing you get is creativity, restoration of your perspective gives you sort of renewed sense of what you want to create, what's important to you. Another thing you get is renewed energy. This doing something different, turning away from always being on. I call it off the clock, off the hook, and off the grid. where you actually put down your devices. And in my book, I talk about that a lot. All of that gives you a chance, in a sense, to restore yourself to yourself. Do you remember that you are far more than what you are doing, and that your value as a human being is far more than anything you can accomplish? Even if you were Secretary of State, your value just as a human is huge, but we forget that. And so that's what you get from this time off.
And here's our link to guilt, because my instant reaction, even now when I know hugely better, is as a citizen, I need to keep following the train wreck in Washington. I need to know what's happening in my city and my state. I need to be online and connecting with my audience. I must do this. I must take care of my family. I'd be a bad person if I didn't.
Well, I separate. So one thing is, there's no doubt that citizenship is a huge requirement. And, you know, dealing with climate change and being an activist is essential. I believe it's Thomas Merton who said to activists, the sense of nonstop activism is a form of violence.
Wow, what a great quote. Say it again, please.
This is Thomas Merton speaking to activists, that this form of nonstop action is a form of violence. That's not the exact quote, and I can look it up for you. But what he's saying is, do not think for a minute that acting in a state of fatigue or out of unreflective aggression will get us where we need to go. Now, what I'm talking about is a day a week. It's not every day. It's a day when we put aside, as Rabbi Abraham Heschel says, Abraham Joshua Heschel, the world of technological civilization for a day. And we remind ourselves that we are here less as reactive, less reacting to the demands of the world, and more actually being proactive, which we can only do when we are in a state of rest and well-being.
So are you calling the Oasis time a proactive activity, or are you saying that you recover your ability to be proactive?
I would actually say both.
Okay.
Become proactive to set aside your Oasis time and do something unheard of, which is turn away, change the channel, change your mind, focus on the things of the soul. The family, this is a time for family. This is a time for friends, but this is the time to sing together, to eat a lavish meal together, not a meal you've gone crazy preparing, but a meal where we bring food and sit and discuss. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold.
You do. I'm very grateful that you took the time when you're not feeling that well to discuss this with us.
So what we have is an opportunity to turn our attention to the world of wonder, the world of awe. Research shows that awe itself renews our brain, renews our synapses, and renews our feelings of kindness. So here we are, we're going nonstop. We can't put down Twitter or Facebook. We have so much to do. Whatever stage of life we're in, we are doing. I sometimes say we can't really experience the music of life if it's do. It really needs to be do, be do, be do.
That's great. I love it.
We need to put the being into the doing to have music. And music to me is the quintessential human experience that lifts us up and reminds us of the spiritual world, the soulful world, the world of connection. So we can go so fast that we forget to connect and nourish our heart with those soul connections that we need. We need those.
Ah, I just want to kind of sigh into that. That's we do need it.
We need those.
Yeah.
And we need those every week. So in our family, we have people over pretty much every Friday night for a simple group meal. And Saturdays are for hiking and being together and connecting. Now I have a teenager, so he still knows that this is part of his life. And it's a constant reminder to set things aside. So I think one big question is how? Before we go too much further, how?
Yes, please.
And the first thing of the how is to make it important, to understand what is it costing you to go nonstop? What is it costing you in connection to self, in friendship, in getting to those little things you love but you keep postponing? What is it costing you in just seeing a neighbor? I met a man once who was 65, and he told me he loved the French writer Balzac. And when he was 20, he fell in love with Balzac. When he was 40, he hadn't read Balzac much, so he decided to buy the collective works. At 65, when I met him, he said, you know, in all those years, I've not cracked open those collected works of Balzac. But for him, it's Balzac. For another woman I knew, it was kayaking. It was always, I'll kayak once I clean out my attic. But that can go on for years. I'll write a longhand letter to my dear aunt next week. So you start to say, what is it costing me? And what will I gain if I learn little by little, an hour a week, 2 hours a week, half a day a week? What will I gain in a sense of this is my life? I've discovered the meaning in my connections. I remember what I love. So the place to start is building commitment. And that is remarkable, to build commitment. And then the next step is to try it out for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Try putting down your phone and putting down your to-do list just as an experiment. Because what I say to people is often when we first experiment with true Oasis time, it's a little scary. And it's frightening to just sit with ourselves. So we just take a few minutes to plan ahead. What will I do? And do something that you never do. Oasis time is not about scrolling through Facebook. It could be about seeing a movie you've wanted to see for a long time. I'm not anti-screen, but it's a choice, a deliberate, nourishing choice to be off the clock, off the hook, and off the grid. So,
off the clock, off the hook, and off the grid is a wonderful phrase. And it's really different, I think, than mindfulness meditation, which is usually the conversation I have with people who are very much on about the need to disconnect and have our own time. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is that meditation is absolutely valuable, but it's a different thing than what you're talking about.
Meditation is different. I meditate almost every day. And this is more about savoring, slowing down, and really deliberately experiencing whatever you are doing. You could have Oasis time be eating your meal, slowing down, savoring it, or playing with a pet or a child, but in a different way. Really focusing. So it's very much about mindfulness, but bringing mindfulness as I think of that enjoyment, that deep pleasure that we can take in being fully present.
You know what this makes me think of? This is just something that popped into my head. I'm going to float it by you and see what you think. I read some recent research that says that creating ritual can be incredibly helpful in building commitment and developing habits.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like I'm hearing ritual in some of the things that you describe with your family, like we have a meal together, or we plan to go on walks together. We take time to talk about religious topics and spiritual topics and soul topics. And I'm thinking the reason I brought it up is partly because of this idea that the ritual can build the commitment and build that sense of oasis at the same time.
Well, one of the things I think you're saying, and I think is so important, is the notion of creating a practice or a discipline. And I think the ritual reinforces this practice or discipline so that as Friday night comes, we sound a tone. I have a little Tibetan prayer bowl, and we sound a tone. And we say, the week is now over. Let's become present and light candles. And that signals, that's a ritual, that signals we're putting away our to-do lists. We're not doing homework. We're putting away our screens, and we are entering a different world. And we do that every week. So that becomes a habit that reinforces this practice of Oasis time. But you can have Oasis time for 15 minutes twice a day where you actually say, I'm taking my phone, I'm putting it down, I'm turning it off just for 15 minutes. I'm going for a slow walk. I'm going to start with a few deep breaths. And I'm going to see what's up with me. What's churning? Because in some ways, if we miss that, we miss our own life experience. So we can start with just a few minutes a day, starting with this ritual of deliberately putting our phone down. And if we feel we can't do that, maybe putting it on stun and putting it in a different pocket. But actually practicing maybe putting a shawl on or rubbing our hands with lotion, but some concrete physical way of signaling to ourselves that we are now off the clock, off the hook, and off the grid, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes.
I don't know if you could hear. It was very embarrassing. My phone was buzzing during some of that. That's why I dodged out of the way. I hope it wasn't too obvious.
No.
I love the idea of making a simple ritual out of taking even a 15-minute break for a slow walk.
Exactly.
Ah, that's beautiful. All right. So I'm so looking forward. That's the next thing I'm going to do.
Great.
So what have you got? I know that you have a talk coming up that you're inviting people to. Tell us about that.
I'm giving a talk in Seattle on February 5th, Tuesday evening, with the National Association of Professional Organizers. I will talk both about my current book, An Oasis in Time, How a Day of Rest Can Save Your Life. And my previous book, It's Hard to Make a Difference When You Can't Find Your Keys. And your listeners and watchers can go to www.marilynpaul.com to get more information. And I do have something on my website. Please go to my website and remember I was talking about the 15 minutes? I have a way to actually practice that little by little. And if you add your name to my download list, you will get not only a way to take 15 minutes a day for your Oasis time, but I also think as nighttime, our sleep time as Oasis time. And for those of us who struggle to get a full night's sleep, and I put myself in that category occasionally, not mostly now, it's very helpful to have a bedtime ritual, which I talk about in this download.
I totally agree about bedtime rituals. In my book as well, I talk about bedtime rituals. I don't think we'll keep you on much longer because it sounds like you need a little more Oasis time yourself. But I'm so inspired, Marilyn, and energized to build more official Oasis time, official ritual into my life that isn't for the purpose of experiencing my own life. I love that phrase.
Yes. And my book is full. It's a how-to book. It's full of all kinds of tips, everything from how to invite people over for a shared meal to stories about people who do all kinds of things. My friend Bridget, who takes a day off for painting every week. How does she do it? There's tons of how-tos. And that's on Amazon.com.
Well, I love that because for so many of us, we can get stopped by the practicalities. It's like, well, how would I even take that time? Or what would I do if I took it? Or how would I not be bored? Or any of those questions. Or what would a ritual look like? It sounds like you've got all those answers just laid out for us. Beautiful.
It's all in there.
Beautiful.
And you can drastically, believe it or not, increase your productivity. This is the current mantra in the time management world is step away from the action so that you can be renewed and refreshed and get the right things done when you come back to work.
I love that. I love that. So it helps you. It not only helps with your productivity, it helps with your setting proper priorities, correct priorities for yourself.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I'm inspired and energized and wishing you feeling better very soon.
Thank
and
you.
So grateful that you joined us.
Beth, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk with you.
You too.
Take good care.